You don't want to get to know me. You don't want to find out if I'm a good person. You just want to nail me over and over and over again.
A while back, I made a video entitled Brett Keane Super Queer, in which I tried to expose Brett Keane's homosexuality. At the time, I hadn't really taken the time to gather evidence for that claim because I thought that it would be obvious to anyone watching that these signs of his homosexuality are apparent. However, he's made a recent video in which he is talking about his drama with Gman, and I think that it's very clear from the context that what's going on in this video is that Brett is describing a breakup, but instead of just calling it what it is, he is trying to preserve his credibility with the Christian community by pretending that it is a dispute over how to practice one's faith. And if you listen carefully, what you'll hear throughout this video is him using the language of a breakup and the language of a personal, intimate relationship rather than the language of, say, someone talking about their faith and their ideology. So let's take a listen to more Brett Keane.
For a long time, I just wanted to stay a theist. I just wanted to be known as one who believes in God and believes in the possibility. And there's a reason for that.
In the opening segments of this video, Brett does his best to set up a context where this whole breakup with Gman is put in the context of his intellectual development and his spiritual struggles. Whereas in reality, this is a breakup video pure and simple, as we can see from the sexualized language that I showed you from later in the video, which is that little clip at the beginning of this video. Because I think that what happens is that Brett sort of lulls you into a sense of security by pretending that he's talking in a Christian context, when in fact what he's talking about is the termination of his carnal relationship with Gman.
Because I believe that a lot of these religious groups out here, including Christianity and Islam, although I believe that the religion is based upon a position of logic and rationality, the problem is, like atheists, you've probably discovered, even though you hold that your position has some kind of truth, or you base your position on facts and evidence as you claim it, it's humiliating. It's embarrassing whenever you see someone else who wears the same label as you, and they completely and utterly make everything look like shit.
If you follow the action closely, it's very apparent that this context is a thin veneer for what is actually a very personal, a deeply personal issue that Brett Keane wants to talk about in this video.
And some people out there, they don't care if they make you look like shit. Some people do it simply for views, simply so they can get fame.
This has been one of Brett Keane's constant complaints against Gman since the termination of their relationship initially. And I think that the fear is common for lovers to fear that if their partner goes on to achieve a certain level of success, that they'll move up in the world and find a better lover. For instance, Gman could now be with Venom Fang X or one of the other leading gay Christians out there rather than Brett Keane.
Which brings me to someone who makes me very sick to my stomach, someone I stopped hanging out with a while back for this exact reason, someone who, when I hear them talk about their brand of Christianity, it makes me want to get as far away from Christianity as possible.
No one can make you sicker to your stomach than an ex-lover who has jilted you, and no one can make you want to abandon the activities which remind you of them, even things you love dearly, than an ex-lover.
It also makes it very awkward for me in discussion and debate. You're probably asking yourself, well, why is that?
I'm not asking myself that. I've had many conversations with ex-girlfriends and understand where the awkwardness comes from.
There are Christians that like to make these videos where they tell other people that they're not the real deal, that they don't have a walk with God. There are Christians out there that will spend less than 5 minutes with you, and they will tell you that you're garbage, that you're trash.
After a long pregnant pause where Brett really gets his emotions under control, he then sort of contextualizes why he felt Gman was special, because Gman is not stuck up and gave Brett a chance, despite the fact that Brett used to be an atheist and isn't necessarily the most handsome of Gman's suitors.
I remember whenever I finally accepted the label of Christianity, I had followed the idea of God and Jesus for years. But I remember whenever I came into the fold of Christianity, there just simply wasn't, how do I put it?
Brett is struggling for words because he's trying to talk about his homosexuality without admitting that he is a homosexual. And if he only had the speaking skills of, say, a Hillary Clinton, the ability to really dissemble and distort reality, he could pull it off. But as it is, he's just a simple, ordinary guy.
I'd always perceived Christianity as being a family that is supposed to walk together into truth, into the light, in order to try to have an understanding of the universe, why we're here, why we should love, why we should live the way we should, why we should even die for certain things that are important to us.
Here, Brett refers to Gman as family, or being like family, which is something that you could feel towards a friend if it's a friend that goes way back, like a childhood friend. But Brett and Gman, they have only known each other as adults and only in the last few years, which implies that they had a very deep relationship, which could only really happen if they were lovers.
But there's some people out there who make it worthless. There's some people out there who make it absolute garbage. There's some people that are in Christianity that make it so bad and so terrible that you wouldn't wish it on your worst atheist enemy out there.
No one can make Christianity anything other than the way, the truth, and the light, but people can damn sure make love terrible.
I don't want people to become a part of a religion. I don't want people to become Christians. I simply want people to realize that there's a God, and He loves you, and His Son died on the cross for you.
Then you do want them to be Christians, because that is exactly what being a Christian means. I'm beginning to see the nature of G-Man's complaints.
That He will do everything for you in His power as long as you freely volunteer your choice to serve Him, to love Him, to consider Him your Father, and do what you got to do.
And again, you say you don't want people to be Christian, but then you say what you want them to do, and you define what it means to be Christian. So, yeah.
I watched a video of Gman, and like always, he has dropped bombs on Fiona, and I don't agree with her on some things, but I don't make videos about her all the time, sitting there dissing on her and telling her, oh, she doesn't do God right. I get aggravated with some of the things she says, but I still think she's a Christian. I still think that in her heart, she believes that she's doing what she thinks is right, and I believe that she has just as much a chance of getting to heaven as I do.
Couples often fight about how to regard their friends and how to act towards different friends and what to say or not say, or where the boundaries are with how critical you can be of your partner's friend. And I think that this is just a basic communication problem that's probably exacerbated by the fact that many of their exchanges are on Skype, and that they can't see each other in person all the time because Brett's leading a double life with his wife Dawn, and G-Man obviously lives in New Jersey most of the time.
There's Rev News. Rev News has lost his mother. He's lost people in his life. He's been through a hell of a struggle. He's had the spine and the balls to actually get up into rooms and try his best, as much as he can, to put his heart on his shoulder and try to reveal to people that he cares about them, and he's trying.
So the same thing applies as last time. It's how to deal with one's friends, and also he is talking about how this gentleman puts his heart on his sleeve, which somewhat tells me that maybe he thinks that G-Man isn't quite affectionate enough.
Sometimes he gets infuriated. Sometimes he screams, fuck you, and he gets mad. I know how that feels. I know what it's like to hear people and get aggravated and just want to wring their fucking neck real nice for them and tell them to fuck themselves. I understand him. And I even know what it's like to be on the receiving end of Rev being upset. I know what it's like to disagree with him as well. But he's still a Christian.
The subtext here is that G-Man needs to learn how to deal with the fight and then make up and move on.
There's a lot of people out there where you have your own way of doing things and you interpret the Bible in the way you do. And there are nights where you lay up at night crying and you have tears in your eyes asking God to help you to be better at articulating yourself and expressing a message of love.
Well, he goes on to talk about preaching the message of love to atheists. He really means sharing his own love with Gman, as is clear from the context of the video.
But there's some of you out there where you don't give a shit. There's some of you out there that you don't cry. You don't feel remorse. You never hold yourself accountable for what you did.
Here, Brett's true intentions are revealed by his eloquence. This is the perfect description of what a bad lover is like.
And you actually place yourself on the throne of God as though you are God himself. And you are the type of people that make it to where I can't honestly 100% try to convince an atheist to be.
Here, Brett reveals that his actual reason for converting to Christianity had less to do with money and more to do with love, and particularly love of a man.
I can't. What makes you any different than the atheist who thinks that he is God? What makes you more different, Gman, than the atheist who thinks that he's not accountable to anyone?
Once again, we hear Brett talk like a jilted lover, and we can't help but feel sympathy for his position.
What makes you any different than the atheist who doesn't think that he requires forgiveness? What makes you any different than the atheist who thinks he's smarter than everybody else, including other atheists? Not a damn thing.
You know that Brett's really angry when he compares a fellow Christian to an atheist, since we know that there's nothing he hates more than atheism. So this means that Brett is very, very deeply hurt. One might even say butthurt.
I make mistakes all the time. And I constantly ask God for forgiveness, and I constantly ask for God to help me.
Brett's only real mistake was in dating a much younger man and expecting it to last. If you want a lasting relationship, you probably need to find somebody your own age.
And when I first met you, I thought that God had brought you into my life because I thought that you were going to be able to help me. I thought you were the real deal. I thought you were someone who was actually going to be able to help me on my journey, becoming stronger and having a greater relationship.
Gayer words have never been spoken, and I think that it's very fitting that Brett, who is a very outspoken Christian here on YouTube, phrases the beginnings of their relationship in a very Christian terminology, which shows that it's something that is near and dear to his heart, and that his heart's intent was on Gman, and that he could have spent the rest of his life with Gman, but that Gman has gone and thrown it all away.
But what you have taught me that is very good is now I realize that my walk with God is alone. It may not be the way you like it, and maybe you can't even perceive it, but it's there, and I'm working on it.
So here we have Brett saying that he's basically been rejected by the gay Christian community, but I think that he just needs to probably work harder on that, because clearly Brett is not going to quit being a homosexual. And honestly, you know, I think that God will forgive gayness as long as you're open about it and you don't try to deceive people by pretending to be a heterosexual. Because Brett can't really provide meaningful moral advice to heterosexuals who obviously have an innate moral superiority to him. So I think that he just needs to be honest about who he is, and then people will respect him and take him with a grain of salt. You know, some of the things he says will be accurate and spiritually enlightening, and other things won't be that useful because they'll be about men. Anyway, this has been Remarkable Republican, bringing you the truth with a true-flavored bias, and I have now officially proven that Brett Keane is in fact a gay homosexual. Thank you and good night.